A lot of neat things we can ask this gang. So we've got Chad, we've got Doug, we've got John, we got Mike, we got Neal, we got Mark, and we got Justin. And all these guys are in the top groups in all 3 flights. So it'll be kind of fun to ask their opinion on what they thought was most important and what was valuable today. And I guess one thing that I would urge right now, if you guys are up for it, is moving right up here to the front if you want. All these tables are open. And please ask, any questions these guys are all anxious to answer. So please, come on up and ask some questions. That would be great. And there's a lot of traffic. How do you keep the boat moving? And I've asked these guys, not to necessarily get into every detail, but what in their mind was most important to keep the boat at top speed today. So I'll start with Justin, and we'll go all the way down the line, and just see what because everybody has different ideas, what means the most. So Justin, you take it first.
Yeah, so we got off the line well once. The other 2 times we were definitely falling back pretty quickly, so we were always focused on lane management right off the gun. Mostly looking at how we were going to exit when our lane was disappearing. And then the other thing was really looking for pressure the whole time. Most of our successes came when we found pressure patches to connect from one point to the next. And then we actually got in trouble when we started paying a little too much attention to the compass. And even though it was a really good number, we weren't sailing to the next dock. And because I think the pressure really helps you power through that chop out there, you get a lot more than what you even would in kind of the same if the water was flatter.
So my job is just to steer the boat. So I just try to focus on making the boat go fast. So whenever we're going slow, the first thing we do is we move our jib cars forward. Because in my boat, if I don't know why sometimes they seem silly forward, like in front of the line that's on the sail, if you have a north sail. So whenever the boat is feeling a little logy, I talk to Christine going upwind. Okay, move the windward car 1 hole forward, 2 holes forward. So we move our jib cars around a lot, going up the beat based on which is the bumpy tack versus the smooth tack, and then based on how much pressure there is. And then the other thing is the backstay is like the brake pedal. So, you pull the backstay, the boat just goes slower. So, you just got to have enough backstay, I think, so when you're hitting the waves, the backstay is just kind of alive. It's kind of bouncing, but it's not flopping, but it's not taut either. So, my focus is just to try to make the boat go fast. So, those are the 2 important things that I focus on.
So Mark, wait, just when you say your lead is a little forward of that trim line, and what do you do with the sheet then? So you're moving it forward a couple of clicks of what the straight line extension would be, then how about the sheet? What do you do then?
Well, on my boat I drilled like 2 holes between every, I don't have the adjustable cars, so we have the plunger. So I drilled 2 extra holes between each hole that comes in the standard track. So we can move that a lot. But Christine, I would talk to her a lot. If we're pressured up and we're hiking, I'd say trim hard. We just try to go up. I'm a pincher, so you can talk to Corey about that. That's a whole But so we talk a lot about how tight she's trimming, and she does a really good job, with jib in and out. And I really don't have to say much at all to her about that because it's moving around quite a bit. But sometimes she's nice to the skipper. She tends to be on the loose side of life, and so I tell her to trim her every once in a while. But it moves around a lot.
Neal, how about you?
So the question was,
Let's talk. What's most important, or what are you guys thinking about that's most important to keep the boat at top speed, or as much as you can?
I don't think so.
okay, well, the most important thing upwind was to do less. Less is more today. You're sailing square waves, light, bodily stuff. You better have a damn good reason to turn. And sort of one of the mantras I brought to the boat was, if we don't know what to do, we keep going. At least we won't have gone out of our way to screw ourselves. And also, I'm a huge fan of using compass, and today I was referring to compass as a random number generator. So I went back to my college roots, and the goal was always to be on the long tack to the mark or long jibe to everything, regardless of what the number said. And we also looked hard for when the water looked darker, we went towards it, regardless of the heading. And we also, having sailed here for a few days and not sailed here for a few days, treated the last race as, maybe this is the last race, we better put some leverage on here to get back in there, and probably dug in a little deeper than we normally would have.
Neal, can I ask you a specific? Talk about the heel, like in that lumpy stuff, and you're seeing waves and you're coming at it. What do you guys do heel-wise?
Apparently I do not hike hard enough, so. So I mean, if I was driving, I would have heeled more than we were, and I know I'll defer to Todd and Christine on that, but I would have heeled more than we were.
So as a chine, would you say 2 inches, 4 inches out of the water?
Just barely out.
Yeah,
So
almost flat.
So pretty flattish.
I mean, if you can't get the chine in the water, then you want to put it in the water. And if you need the work to make the boat heel, then you raise it up a little bit. Once you can't really get the chine on the water, like it as flat as you can, unless it's really nasty stuff.
I'm not sure anybody in the back heard that.
Can you repeat that, Todd, and kind of stand up?
So,
No escape.
Get the
so
mic.
when you have to hike really hard to try to get the chine and hit the water, maybe you can't even do it. That means it's windy enough to sail as flat as you can and get the chine like right at the water level. You know, just hike as hard as you can. And if you're not hiking as hard as you can anymore, that's when I would heel a little bit and have the chine just out a little bit or on a really bad wave. But once there's enough wind that you're fully powered, go almost as flat as you can, unless there's a really nasty set.
So our team was definitely focused on speed today. We knew, it wasn't shifting too much that we saw, maybe 15 degrees, like biggest shift. And it was tricky conditions for driving, so I was definitely head at the jib, in front of the boat, looking at waves, and focusing on the heel of the boat, like we were talking about. My crew did a great job today. I barely talked to them about, in and out, hike hard. We always try to keep it at the same level. If we saw some, big set of waves coming, we would like to maybe one person go in. I specifically, when a big set of waves would come, I was playing the main sheet a lot today, and I would kind of put the bow down, pop the main sheet out, maybe just ease just a little bit, get power in the boat, and really just drive through it. And that really only worked if you were really paying attention in front of you as a skipper. So I thought that was one of the reasons why we were fast today. We were fast, but we weren't the fastest in the Green Fleet. This guy was really fast today, so I'm looking forward to what he has to say. But yeah.
Yeah, talk about, like when you're steering, how high up you let the boat go and how far down, like that range that you're steering through. And you're talking about playing main. How far up and down are you going?
Yeah, so I don't try to go too hard. Like, I really want to press on that jib. I really want both tailtails flying straight back, a lot of pressure in the jib, and that choppy stuff. There are sections where it's flatter, where you can you get flatter as a boat, and you can trim the main sheet all the way in and really hike hard. And I'm still never pinching, no pinching at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the Todd Wake boat where I like to sail as flat as possible, and even in the waves, it hurts, and and it sounds terrible, but I find is the flatter the better. Even in the big sets of waves, you kind of just take it like a man and you see yourself, you know, next to boats, you see yourself hold your height through the waves.
Oh, your boat next year. Somebody else get it.
As opposed to letting the helm load up and heel over and slide sideways. So that was a big upwind. And then downwind, it was kind of the conditions where, you know, obviously you weren't planing all the time, you weren't surfing all the time, but it was taking the opportunity to catch the waves when you could. And it was a lot of crew movement aft and forward to stay on the waves and timing the pumps with the main and the chute at the same time. So we had quite a bit of success with that downwind, being very proactive and working the boat hard to get those opportunities. Found that pretty well.
Don, how much was your crew adjusting the jib upwind? Sometimes people talk about keeping the jib kind of set and steering to the jib, or sometimes you play the jib, you know, when you're hitting waves. What was the range of adjustment?
I'm a big fan of just kind of setting it, letting the driver drive to it, which I've always done. So I kind of handle that rather than chasing our tails around with a lot of, you know, in and out and everything. I prefer just to drive to the jib and bubble it when you need to and load it up when you need to.
Okay, cool. So Doug, 2 bullets today. Not too shabby.
Wow.
All right, so first thing I would say, hike really hard. We're pretty small, and my crew did not have leverage like John over here has. So we were hiking really, really hard, and if you don't do that, you're leaving gains on the table. That's the first step. So sailing is a lighter team today. We really focused on using the Traveler and backstay in sync with a little bit of main sheet to keep us powered up enough to go through the waves, but also flat. Really like John and my dad, we were focusing on sailing really flat. So we were going to windward pretty well. We weren't sliding. But I think just getting all of your controls in sync when you're overpowered like that, and really having the middle person going at them and moving them constantly, I think that's super important because you can sort of get your boat in a groove, and eventually once you get going in a straight line, you can feel exactly what needs to be put where.
So how much were you playing the main, Doug, when you're going upwind and you're keeping the boat flat? Is that what you're doing to keep the boat flat, or is it Traveler or backstay, or all of the above? What are you looking at?
So I guess we were using the controls more to keep the boat flat, and then when I was moving the main sheet, it was to twist off and give us a bit of power when we were going through waves. So like you see a set of waves coming, you got 3 really bad ones, crack the main sheet out an inch, open it up a little bit, power through the waves, and then once you get going again and get in a flat spot, I'd be sheeting it back in. So the main didn't move that much, but it moved frequently, if you guys get what I'm saying with that.
Chet, let us have it.
Chet, wake up, buddy.
Wake up, buddy. Wake up, buddy.
I don't know, a lot of people have covered a lot. It's interesting that,
Closer with the mic.
closer?
There you go. There you go.
Get down there,
It's interesting to say that Mark was focused on moving his jib leads around. We actually have the car pullers so we can move them, but we never did move them. They lived on the number 2 line. I actually thought it was fairly easy to keep the boat moving today if you didn't have anybody close under you. And there seemed to be plenty of pressure to make the boat go through the waves most of the time. One of the races it got a little bit light. Maybe it was the middle race got a little bit light. The thing we did a little differently today, we were set up in the light air mode pretty much all day, which ordinarily in the absence of everything else, I would have said, let's go a little bit go to the medium mode. But that's where we were to begin with, and it seemed to work well, so we kind of stayed there. And I think it keeps the jib nicely powered up because the headstay is saggy. And the thing that I think we developed a little bit as the day went on, trimming harder seemed to work well. And a lot of the time I was telling her to pull the jib in harder. And it seemed to keep it pressurized and just keeping the telltales flowing. And a lot of the time in the greater puffs, we'd hike very hard as the puff would hit us. They're both, Charlie and Meredith, very quick to recognize when the boat's loading up and hike very hard, but also Just a touch of backstay, just to open the top of the main a little bit until the boat settles down and right back off of it again to keep it moving. And heel angle, I think, is just fairly constant. And basically trying to keep the top batten parallel to the center line of the boat all the time on the main. I think that, pretty much there. Occasionally had to, had to do a little bit of a dive in to keep the boat from getting too flat and coming into a wave, but not a lot of the time. I think it helps to be fairly light. Makes it a little easier to be a little bit on the overpowered end of things than to be on the underpowered.
Jen, 3 questions. First, how did you decide that you wanted to use your light air settings? I mean, what kind of made you think it's normally medium air, now I'm going light air? Because of the lump, or what was it thinking?
It really wasn't because of the lump. It was a little bit because we don't think the forecast is the wind's going to build. And then it was a little bit like, gee, this works really well. Let's not mess with it. It just seemed pretty easy to keep the boat going with that setup. The head stay sag helps the ship be loaded up because it's taking a little bit of the twist out of it. Lets the front get a little flatter. One thing that become fairly...
Is there local knowledge, or what are you guys thinking about as far as the day, Mark?
I've done the local knowledge talk at a lot of events, and I generally don't do it at an event I'm participating in because people get really mad at me because I say certain things, whatever. But there's a rule of thumb. Yes, it's frequently called Rochester. Actually, Tommy Allen, I don't know if he's here, he was not aware of that yesterday, but I told him about that. So, but the rule of thumb is the wind's left of 280, it's kind of left Chester. If when you look up, the buoy is to the right of the point, which is usually in the 300s, it's pretty much game on. And so we ended up being right, I think, all day. And the reason we were right is we thought there was pressure right. And we looked up the race course, we saw more sheep to the right, and we're just going to go where the sheep are. And so, yeah, yes, there's local knowledge, but I know one of our other local guys made a big move out of the left, the second beat of the second race, I think. So, nothing is for sure, but it's kind of the point is the make or break thing. If the wind's to the left of the point, yes, the left side's probably favored. If the wind's to the right of the point, it's pretty open, although you pretty much have to pick a side and try to win your side. I would say that.
John, so that's interesting. So that was interesting about what side's supposed to work out. But when you, let's say it is left to that point and it's supposed to be a left Chester day, does that mean you start at the pin and you bang it all the way out there, or do you kind of watch that side or protect that side? How conservative are you on a day like that?
I think you need to commit pretty hard to the left. If it is inside that point there, yeah, you got to get into there. If you tack it short, you're gonna have people go by you and you watch them lift inside you as you go in there. So it is kind of an all or nothing sort of move. We cruised out there once today on an upwind leg with the other local boat, and it got pretty ugly for us. So certainly once it's off that point, it's kind of everything's out the window and you're back to normal sailing and working the oscillations like we saw today. So Mark kind of hit it right in the nose there with his explanation of things. Okay.
So now I'm going to ask Neal. Neal and Todd and Christine had a rough, was it the last race where you guys rounded the top mark?
Second.
Well, we could see it, so that kind of tells you where you guys were. But you guys did a super job of coming back to a top fiver, right? I mean, so, the number one thing is you don't give up. The number two thing is, what do you do? What do you do to work back without rolling the dice and all that jazz. How did you guys pull that off? And that was very impressive.
Well, we had started low. We figured the pin was favored by 10 or 15 degrees during the starting sequence, and we had an okay start down there.
Delivery.
And had to fight and sailed not fast towards the left edge. And as we were going there, it just kept lifting and lifting and lifting and lifting and lifting and lifting. New numbers, random number generator day. And also, having sailed here for a few days, thinking, well, this may be our last race. It's got to work or it doesn't have to work. So we put ourselves pretty much out on the edge. And it never came back, so we had a really ugly slog into the weather mark. But with the breeze so far right, we jibed immediately down the road, which was a significant gain. The distance wasn't so many places, but we were close to the lead group. And our thought was take the left gate and take the first lane to the right. The breeze is still right. The right thing is already done. Let's sail in phase on starboard. As soon as we have a clear lane, go fast. It's choppy and crappy. And the next opportunity was as soon as we were down, we had a lane back to the right. It just looked darker, darker. And the numbers weren't so great. We just went towards the darker water. And then got to it, tacked, and we were pointing towards the mark. Just sailed. Gave up on the numbers and just sailed towards the mark, get pressure whenever we could. Forget the numbers, clear air, pressure towards the mark, and that worked out fine. I was quite astonished, actually. That was it.
Any questions on this stuff, you guys? So now I would like to ask Mike, when you're going into a top mark, and the whole world seems to be getting there at the same time. There's a group on the port tack ley line, there's a group on the starboard tack ley line. How far back do you kind of start setting up? And what are you looking for to kind of put yourself in as clean of a lane or an entry as you can? What are you thinking about, Mike?
So if I'm looking to tack on the port ley line, I really don't want to tack on the port where I'm going to be in a 3-boat length. So if I need to leave out someone really hard and mess their whole day up, I won't foul them. That's like one of the biggest things I like to do. In the back, I always be conservative and try to, put some tack on the starboard ley line pretty conservatively, and where you can kind of foot down to the mark. Yeah. So today in the Green Fleet, we didn't really deal with that big of a crowd at the top mark. But I always try to have, when we get to the top mark, I really want my crew to tell me, what do you think about the downwind? What do we need to do at the offset? And I think today we didn't do one, but I think a jibe set could have been some good moves today, depending on the wind. So that's what we're kind of talking about, what we talk about when we get to the top mark.
Any questions? So Justin, how do you know when it's a jibe set or you're going to just bear away at the offset?
We usually try and have a discussion right once we figure out how we're approaching the ley line, what phase the wind is in the final approach. And we generally, especially in the larger fleet, shy away from the jibe sets because every time we do them, we tend to end a little flat. I think they were more effective today than they can be because a lot of times you came out, you were really pointing right down in that leeward mark. But we actually, I think every time carried for the general set because it never felt so skewed that we were giving up too much. You're just always worried about sailing underneath all the other boats on the starboard ley line and just running out of gas through there.
Anything you want to add?
I guess I'm the opposite of Justin. So I just, like, we have the same dialogue as we're approaching the mark. We're just like, which tackle we've been on the longest? And we figure that out. So okay, that's the jibe we want to be on. So if you sail on starboard a long time, you're going to come out on port jibe. So we talk about which tack have we been on the longest? And then I basically make the decision as I tell the crew, okay, I'm either going to go high coming out of the offset mark, or I'm going to go really low. So if we decide we want to jibe, I go low, and I try to go as low as I can, knowing that the people are going to roll me to windward, but lightnings just go basically dead downwind as fast as if you sail angles, in my opinion. So I go as low as I can go, as far as I can go, and then I jibe to port. And we did that every run today, and frankly, I think we gained every run today. And I had just a great lane. Yes, the first 300 yards are a mess. You know, the Corey's like, she's got nothing, and da-da-da-da-da. But the next 1.1 miles, you know, the next 1.1 mile, you have the best lane of everybody. And there's nobody messing with you, and you just go fast. You just sail the waves, and you just go fast. So I think in lightning, it's really crucial because the boats go so deep to get a lane where you can just sail. And today we just paid a price pretty much every time at the windward mark in order to get that lane.
Actually, Mark, while you got it, talk about like sailing deep, what you were doing angles-wise, what you thought was most important to keep the boat going fast downwind. There's surfing going on, all that. Can you just touch on that? What was important?
Yeah, we actually, Corey and I, there's some question whether you heel the boat to windward or whether you heel the boat to leeward. And initially I was sitting on the leeward side, and Corey always trims on the windward side, and Christine was on the leeward side, and we weren't going really well. So then I moved to the windward side, and we heeled the boat to windward a little more, and that allowed me to pump the main a little more effectively. We had the board up very high, and I adjust the board probably 100 times going down the run, based on whether I'm trying to go down or whether I'm trying to go up with the waves. And then I try to talk to Corey about, okay, big wave come in, and we pump, and we try to pump at the same time. So we ride the wave but down, and then we try to heel the boat to windward a little bit and carve down on the chine, and then move the wave to leeward a little to come back up. So there's a lot of dialogue going on, and meanwhile Christine's looking backwards, at the pressure and saying pressure's up, pressure's down, and helping me steer the boat as to to stay in the pressure but to go as fast as we can with the waves. So sometimes it always doesn't match up. Corey's light, but Christine thinks the pressure is down, so we just stay down and kind of wait for that puff to get to us. So there's periods where there's a lot of talk on the boat as whether we're doing the right thing, but it's just going around in a circle, basically the conversation, and we're trying to just move the boat, pulls way back, booms all the way out, and the centerboard kind of just going up and down based on where I'm trying to put the boat.
So can you touch on that? Because I know for a lot of us, we don't necessarily play the board downwind like that. Just briefly, what are you looking for there, and how high up does it come, and how far down when you're heating it up does it go?
Well, when you're kind of fully loaded up, and this is what I do, and when you're fully loaded up but you're not worried about tipping over, the board's all the way up. And you're just like scooting sideways. You're literally just kind of going sideways. The boat's heeled to windward, and the boat's kind of scooting sideways. When it gets light, I'll drop the board maybe a foot aboard, and then head up to load the boat back up again to get moving. So if the boat's loaded up, we go deep with the board up. If the boat's not loaded up, then the board comes down, and we load the boat back up and try to get it going.
Cool. That's good. Any questions, you guys, on that? So Mike, talk about when we're going into the gate, or maybe back when you make the decision which gate you're going to go to and how you're going to choose the gate. And unless you guys have any questions. Anybody have any other questions on the speed stuff?
Okay, so going into the gate, yeah, so we really, I mean, halfway down the run, we were on a side and we're like, you know, the right gate's probably going to be easiest to round. And we just try to get around the gate really fast. We always look, you know, it's always a big discussion on our boat, which gate's favored. I think today they were pretty good, but they were also really far apart. So it was kind of tough to tell, but I think there was a couple of favorite gates being more of one. So you kind of had to go for those, but especially today where I think, you know, you could kind of make either side work. The main focus is, you know, getting good rounding, clear breeze, and no one in front of you pinching you off or anything. And that's what we really focused on.
Okay. Laura, are we okay on time? How we doing? Everybody good? Or do you want to go for a little more, or are you guys ready to...
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to add something about the downwind you were talking about. The downwind that you were talking about. So we were having kind of trouble. We were surfing waves, and we were trying to play the guy a lot. Were you playing the guy? So we would surf down a wave, and headwind would go forward, and our shoe would pretty much collapse. Corey. And also, boat 11 and Greenfleet was really fast downwind, so they wanted to also hear what they were doing on race 2.
Corey's over there, but she was moving the guy around a little bit, but not a ton.
Okay.
Here he is.
I can answer for Justin's boat. We didn't move the guy much at all on the surf because he would get the board up and drive as deep as he possibly could down every wave. So it wouldn't go that far forward, and we just have to carry it and stretch the foot a little bit. We could, the pole was high enough to where it survived most of the time.
Okay. I mean, it really sucks when the chute comes back at you. But then on the other hand, that means you're doing as well as you can. Exactly. Like, you're not going any faster than that.
I heard a couple times, fix it.
Anybody have any specific other questions?
You just say wait. It'll get fixed itself.
Yeah.
I had a question for, I guess, Greg and Chet. Today in the really big chop, your forestay and your wire, like I always thought we should have the wire a little bit tighter, but then I kept wanting to loosen it, try to get the most power in the jib. Could you talk through that a little bit?
Yeah, sure.
I don't think we ever changed the wire. The little car was on the 7 all day, and basically it's just equal to the head stay. Move the jib cloth a lot.
Wow.
But I don't think we ever moved the wire.
With our stuff, Jeff, we were moving the halyard a lot, but when I say a lot, you know, in a puff we'd pull it on, in a lull we'd let it off, but we were always using the same guide so that the luff wire was just a little bit tighter than the head stay. It wasn't like we're trying to take head stay sag out or pull the rig forward or anything like that. We just always wanted to have all the load on the luff wire. But in a puff, Joanne would pull it on, and in a lull, she'd ease it off. And I think kind of like what I think Chet mentioned, that we'd always had the slop out of the backstay, so it wouldn't be winging around when we eased the main sheet out, so that, you know, the rig wouldn't go forward in the lull. So John, when you went around the bottom marks, you know, you pick the gate, and then you're trying to decide what the next move is. You know, you got people on your face. The middle, you know, is kind of a rough place to be. You see gang on the gang that's going around the other gate. How do you decide whether you're going to attack and cross the middle with the spinnakers coming down, or you're just going to kind of muscle through it and make it work?
Well, you know, approaching the leeward gate, we always kind of have a discussion, you know, what phase we think we're in, you know, whether it's right or left, and kind of use that to determine the plan. And then you come out of the mark and you settle in, and I'm a big fan of just getting out, getting the boat cleaned up, and just going as fast as you can for as long as you can, unless you have a really, really good reason to attack. So that's kind of the logic there. You know, you come around the mark and take a look at the number and see where you are, and then you kind of do the game plan from there. It's kind of how the conversation goes in the boat.
Doug, you had a nice day where you had 2 firsts, so when you're ahead, how do you put yourself so you kind of can protect on the boats behind you? What are you looking at? Like if we're fortunate enough to be in a spot that we want to cover the boats behind, whether we're winning or we're 5th, but we want to protect, what are you guys looking for? What do you do to make sure you stay ahead of them?
So I guess what we focused on the most, it was generally not like a huge divergence of boats that we were covering today. There would be like probably 3 or 4 boats that we really had to keep track of on the beat. And it was nice for us because generally we were all going the same way. But I think my biggest advice from the juniors having this is focus on not giving them a ton of leverage, but really sail your own race. Because if you got ahead, you're doing something right. So I guess what I would be saying is stay with the other boats, but if you see a really big puff and you're sailing a 10-degree header and you can tack and sail through the puff, definitely consider it, definitely think about doing stuff like that, because if you're just trying to stay with another boat, then you basically got a giant chain around your ankle like, oh, but I can do this better. So I think focus on sailing the race as you would without the other boats there.
So Chet, we're going into the finish. How do you decide which end you're going to go to, where you're going to cross it, and just talk a little bit about the tactics as you're approaching the finish line, what you're thinking about.
Other than the first race, I was usually thinking about, boy, did we really messed this up. Trying to get there as quick as we can with the wind as clean as possible. I don't remember if you noticed, but the second race we rounded the last weather mark right in front of you, Greg and Jide, and as soon as they did it, I said, oh, no. Hope we see him again sometime. So, I think it was just trying to stay on the head of Jive and try and keep our wind somewhat clear.
Explain, you said headed Jive. I mean, I think we all know what you mean, but explain that, Chet, because that's a real important concept as you were going downwind to think about. What do you mean by headed Jive and, what you're thinking about there?
Well, I think I'm looking at where the mark is and looking at the angle we're sailing and thinking which angle is going to be closer to it. So, as Neal put it, get on the jibe that's longer towards the mark. Unfortunately, a couple of times we put ourselves right in the middle, and it's like, yep, there's wind over there, there's wind over there. How are we going to get out of this? And usually I just got really uptight and upset, and Charlie would say, are we going a lot slower than a lot of other boats? And I'd say, yeah.
How we doing, you guys? Who has a question? Gotta have a question.
I'd like a general question on the confidence over these last 2 days. When you say I'm going to start at the boat end or I'm going to start at the pin, that's clearly the best place to be, and I want to do this. Is it like, yeah, like I'm a top guy and I know this is what to do? Or is it like a bit more, well, maybe, and this isn't working? A little, I know you touched on that a little bit, but I just wonder, this is definitely the correct jibe end to be on the best. I want to be on starboard here, I want to be on port here. Definitely aiming for that puff. Or is it sort of like, maybe this is the thing to do?
So like how
How confident are you guys that are winning? Like, hey, I'm kicking ass, I'm going right, and I'm right.
And everybody else is wrong, right? How about that? How conservative are you?
We try and become conservative, but I wouldn't say that we're 100% confident in anything we're doing. Like, we're confident when our bow is pointed at the weather mark and we're in pressure. We know we're doing something right then. If we're not pointed at the weather mark, like if it's kind of a middle number, we don't know. And, it's not fair to ask us because there's lots of other talented people who are really good guys who aren't up here right now because they had bad days. And it just goes both ways. We look for things that can give us advantages. And today I think the biggest advantage was connecting to pressure. So it was less so much the right side is going to pay than we think there's pressure starting at the right and how we're going to connect the dots from there.
Mark, what do you?
Yeah, I agree. I got 2 really bad starts in the second and third races, and those were our best races. But I guess I'm used to getting bad starts. So, the first thing I focus on is when I bail to port, are we up or down? I mean, that's the first thing I ask, because a lot of times you bail to port and you're up, and I'm like, okay, I mean, I can deal with this. If you can just like blast out and get a lane with nobody on your lee bow, and then you kind of reset, if you will. You look up the course, trying to figure out, okay, we're in phase right now. I think that's the most important thing, is try to get in phase at the start or right after the start. And there's so many times I've had a good start and we're down 15 and you can't tack. And so great, I got a great start and I'm down 15. And 6 minutes later, it really wasn't that good a start because I just sailed a header, a third of the way across the beat. So I think it really is important to try to get on the lifted tack as soon as you can. And then, frankly, then what we start doing is trying to connect the dots again. But if you're going on the headed tack in bad air, it's a bad combination. So if you're ducking people on a lift, I'll do that. That's okay, because I have hope I'm going to punch out with a lane and kind of just go forward from there. So I think it can't. Sometimes the bad starts work out better than you think, I guess. But you can't let it bum you out, and you gotta take the opportunities that are out there and try to maximize them, even though things didn't go the way you initially thought.
Perfect. Any other questions? Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah, Mark mentioned before that Corey played the jib a lot. I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit on the range and how she played the jib.
It's actually Christine.
Oh.
And we would go from like you guys were talking about the super flat mode where the chine's basically almost touching the water. Then you'd be trimming super hard. That might be 3 inches, 4 inches in. Would be the max when the boat's loaded up and you're hiking as hard as you can and you see a patch of flat water and you're just like, we're going up. And then when you sail into the next hole and there's 3 waves coming at you and then everybody's got to heel the boat, you probably go to maybe an inch in. I think whenever we got to the tip, to me the jib felt like it just wasn't there. And there was nothing to press against. So sometimes I tell her, don't ease anymore, and just let me pull the boat down and press on the jib. That feels better than twisting it off too much. But that's the range, and it's very wave dependent and very pressure dependent. But it's kind of how the boat feels to you.
So, trying to keep the leech telltale streaming all the time.
Never stall the leech telltale on the jib.
What's that?
Never, ever stall the leech telltale.
Yeah, so I found if I tried to pull it in more, it wasn't flying, it wouldn't.
That's like the other brake pedal, in my opinion, besides the backstay. Those are the 2 brake pedals.
Tell the helmsman to head up.
Ah, there you go.
No, seriously.
You had a question.
That often is the reason we stall.
Oh, okay.
Big side, left, right,
Stall the wall.
or right, left or right side, and you're going downwind, and the left course for the figure, but you run the wrong, the right mark. How do you go back to where what was favored for you, or do you start working the right way until you get knocked and lifted, and you start working your way back left? So, there's some people that choose the left side, but they run the right mark. Do you work your way back left if it's favored, or do you work the right side until?
When you go down to the gate.
Yes.
You go to the gate.
The question?
I think you're saying when you go to the gate and you want to be the right side, but you're kind of forced to the other gate mark. So what you mean, and how you get yourself back over there without going through a lot of pain, right? Is that kind of? Okay.
I think you have to be patient to get away from everyone else coming downhill. back at heights is really slow. So you've got to, if you're forced to the wrong gate, you've got to get out into the open before you even think about it.
A little closer.
Hold the mic close.
Hold the mic closer. Good. All right. So if you're forced to the wrong gate and you want to get back, if say you're forced to the right gate downwind and you want to go right upwind, you have to get past all the melee before you can do anything about it. Going back into the mess is going to be very, very slow, especially in this moderate air and chop here. You must be patient, grasshoppers.
Any other questions before we hang it up? Anything else, you guys? Anything you guys want to add? Anything?
I have something.
Yeah.
Somebody here asked about confidence in starting at a certain end of the line or a certain place on the line. One comment I have to that, before the first race, it looked like there was a fair amount of dark clouds sort of coming past the north of us, which figured was likely going to pull the wind to the right. Also, the weather end of the line seemed to be a good 10-15 degrees favor. And I think my thought was, there's going to be a huge pileup up there. There's going to be 2 or 3 boats that are going to come out of that very nicely. I think it's a better bet to try and come out of the middle of the line with a good place just to be able to go fast. And that's a good bet to be in the top 3 or 4. And, trying to just avoid disasters. It's to me, it's a little higher bet to actually stay away from the favored end of the line a little bit and let the other guys mess themselves up.
That actually was a super good point about, you can almost sum that up by saying, let other people take the risks, make the mistakes, and you're going to sail a little more conservative and not try to be too smart, huh? At any particular time. That was a really good point.
Too lucky.
Right. Exactly. How we doing? Any other questions before we hang it up?
I got one last one I asked one already. That was what Kent was saying. Those clouds. So you guys were all looking at the clouds and that big dark thunderhead on the left, where we were practicing and the right was looking better and better, and then we saw this massive cloud to the left, and we bet it all on going left. And it seemed pretty good. I don't know whether.
John, you want to take that one on the clouds?
I can't remember that race. You won the first
I
race.
saw those dark clouds, and we went left, started pin, went left, running first, so it's a good bet. Anyone else?
Clouds. That's right. I did see those clouds.
Clouds are good. Anything else? Well, thanks to you guys for sharing all your knowledge and being so willing to sit up here, and thanks to all you guys for listening. And I know all of these guys, if you have questions afterwards, would love to chat with you individually, and this is what makes this class great, that these guys are willing to impart their knowledge and help everybody out. Thanks. And Mark and Corey, thanks for doing a great job with your guys. Super fun.
Thank you guys. While you're here.
Bobby is, in fact, the youngest sailor. However, he has been the recipient of this award for the last few years. Most notably, he gave quite a speech back in Houston in 2012. We don't need to do that tonight. However, I'm going to hand over the reins to you, and you can present the winner of the award.
So, as you know, I've gave the